This is the third video in the series on Humanoid. We're going to be looking at the freeze function here. Down here, there's this freeze function. If you haven't watched the first two, the first one we talked about recording the audio and adding in the notes. And the second one, we talked about automation and cool things you can automate to give it a little bit of extra life. Like over here, these swells are built in via automation, just automating things inside of Humanoid. I keep wanting to say Humanoid. Like that, all that stuff's just right in there. So we do that in that video. And in this one, we're talking about the freeze function. So the freeze function allows you to freeze the audio at a spot, and then you can change the length of this frozen audio. So for example, I just sort of push it, just the freeze for the moment. If you toss in the length movement, you get some really wacky effects. Right now, we're just being kind of random, so it's not going to sound that great yet. So yeah, it can get really crazy, really wild. We're going to look at just putting this in a few spots, sort of as a way of touching up some phrases. So, and there's a couple of places where it kind of makes sense to do, to change the way the phrase is sung. Like for example, here we have this, but it would kind of make sense to have a sustain possibly for that part. It could be kind of a cool thing. And then on the second one, it could be different. So let's do that. It's probably one of the most straightforward things to do. So we're going to go to browse parameters, and I'm going to click it just so I see where it's at. We have freeze, and then we have the freeze. And now here it's called freeze length, but over here it's called buffer. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close this. We have our two automation clips right here. Let's go ahead and come over here to this first portion. I'm going to scoot this over, and I actually like chopping off the automation. If you're in another DAW, you can't really do this way. But here I could just sort of have this clip. Freeze is kind of on or off. So I'm just going to have a pulse on. And where you put this pulse is going to matter, because the way the buffer is interpreted will also matter when you're dealing with MIDI. So in recording, we talked about this, but it also matters when you're working with the MIDI itself. So if I were to change this length to high, check out how this sounds. It's because everything's been shifted now, so it's not quite right, because I wrote it with a low buffer length and sort of shifted the audio around for that. Again, here's the high. And then here's the low. So something you're going to want to be aware of is that this setting up here can matter a lot. All right, so let's go over to our freeze. If we just turn the freeze on, where we turn the freeze on is going to matter, because it's going to be affected by this like buffer length setting. So we may need to do a little bit of shifting to get exactly what we want. I imagine here that it just hits a sustain though. Let's see if we get that. We also need to make sure our length that it has to grab is long enough. If it's, super, super short, it's going to be more like an oscillator. And if it's really long, it's going to be more kind of like a small loop. And then you're able to move between these two options. So let's just hear it. Okay, so we're not getting anything. Let's try turning the freeze on just a smidge earlier. A little later. A little later. Now let's try adjusting the length, make it a bit longer. We're grabbing this chunk here. Let's make it a little longer. And maybe actually it was fine where it was. Yes, this is much closer to what we want. Now here, we're going to go a bit nuts. We have it be really tiny. So I'm going to make these a bit bigger. And then what we could do is we like that setting, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of these. And now we have a nice setting to grab. And if you're in another DAW, you'll just have to copy the settings at whatever it is. NFL, they work with on a clip in a clip kind of a way, so it's actually super convenient. So we're gonna take this, and I really like that. We'll let it go, bop, 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 and then we'll do the same thing here. And then I actually really like what that did here. We'll let this one vary because it worked pretty well. You could also change the audio here to screw around with it. And then maybe on this one, we'll try changing up the length. If you do so, make it unique. So I did that by clicking and then hitting M, which stands for make unique. So let's go ahead and see this. Okay, so we've got a stable setting. I recommend finding good places for these loops, finding a good loop length, and then rocking that for a little bit. Find spots you want them to go, and then you can move up to the second stage, which is potentially messing with the length of the loop. This often doesn't work because it gets just too crazy, but sometimes you get these magic results. So let's see if we can find a magic result. I'm just gonna have the loop go up. And again, I've made this unique so it does not affect the previous clips. And by the way, if you really want to, you can hit Control G and it'll merge them. If you've got your idea done and you want them locked as just one big clip, I typically do that at the end. But for now, having them as separate clips makes more sense to me. So let's just see. When we hit playback, we need to start from a predictable position. So it has a buffer that it would normally have when it gets to this position. So that's a little crazy, right? So let's take this down and let's see if we could just add a little bit of something there. Okay, so let's try going way up. Oh, see, I have to start off so that we have a buffer to grab. Okay, maybe that's the call. Maybe we have just a really wild, basically it sounds like a pitch movement sort of a thing. That's pretty cool. So we're gonna keep that. I like that. Let's go ahead, let's move over to this next section. Over here, it goes up an octave, and we have this second line that's just playing whole notes through the phrase so that we have a harmony. This also has the effect of any gating that was previously there from gaps in notes is now lessened because there's this sustained sound going through everything. So let's just see here. Where could we put some of this stuff? Right here, we could like double down on the effect. We might even take this same idea and just put it there. But we might want to time this a little bit. We'll see. This could be a bad idea. You never know. It was a bad idea. Okay, let's move this over. Let's make this shorter. I'm gonna make this unique and make this unique so that I know I'm not touching anything prior. Let's have it be just this short thing. And this one we could just shift over, but it is unique so we can change it if we want to. And with this, let's look for a different spot. And let's get a loop going. Stage one, I find always get the loop. If you find a nice loop, then you can get a little crazier. So see, let's try shortening it. Shorter. And we want to grab this piece of audio here, so let's give it a little more room. That is much better. And let's go ahead and grab this, move it on over. Okay, now we could try something weird. Maybe halfway through, it grabs another section of the loop and then comes back down. This isn't really halfway through. Let's try to time this. We want to grab the bottom one first. something like that. And then the height essentially correlates to where we're jumping in loop length. Oh, that was kind of cool. We could have a big movement like we did on the other one. We could run with that. This is one I might take out, I might leave in, or fiddle with more. But in the interest of time, that's the process. You go through, you find some parts that are cool. Once you have a loop that works well, and it's worth taking your time, being random is just not going to work out too good. You'll get a lot, it'll take a lot longer to get a cool result. Looking at the audio, trying to grab a specific section, and then finding a loop length that works well for that, and then adjusting that, I find to give much better results much quicker. So let's just go ahead. Let's just hear it, this section from over here. Let's actually give ourselves a little bit of room. This actually worked really well. I like it. I'm going to keep it for now. If you have any questions, let me know. That's the freeze function inside of Humanoid. It is one of the coolest effects. If you have any questions about Humanoid, drop them in the comments. Subscribe to that bell icon for future videos. And have a blessed day.